every time I look at the painting, I find something that I didn't know that was there. You know, it's just one of those works that it keeps giving you because there's just so much in the painting. My name is Kirk Vuillemot. I'm the Associate Conservator of Preparation and Framing at the Art Institute. I've been with the museum for 35 years now. Framing in the museum's really evolved over the course of this period. Now we do not only the conservation of frames, but we also work closely with the curators and get to do a lot of research going into making frame-making decisions.
My name is Christopher Howard Brooks. I am a conservation technician here at the Art Institute of Chicago. The thing that I enjoy about working with Kirk is that I get to learn from and witness like real mastery of the craft. And you know, we really have somebody who's thought a lot about all the works in this collection.
I think that a frame can really make or break a painting. I always think of them in tandem, but I think Seurat as a framer really was one of the first ones that actually started to break down the line between frame and painting. I'm lucky enough to spend so much of my life in and around these paintings all the time, and I can say that the Grande Jatte is endlessly deep. Whatever you bring to it, it's going to give you back so much more. When I first started, the first thing I did my first week was start to work on the finish of the previous frame. So this is actually sort of my third go-around on this. The process of deciding the new frame has been, in my mind, it's been ongoing since the painting's creation and the loss of its original frame, and also his change of mind. So I look at the timeline like way beyond my timeline and look at all the collective people that have had thoughts about it and worked on it.
Just seeing the amount of scholarship and knowledge that we've committed to researching this painting, it's a big deal to be a part of that.
This particular frame comes out of research that was done for the 2004 exhibition, but I didn't have the vision to see it at that time, and we weren't able to actually fold all the information that our staff had worked on about the making of the Grande Jatte. Since that time, it's been distilling, and like every time I would walk in the gallery, I think, if I get to do this again, and I think Gloria kind of was having the same feelings, and then the director had said, we really want to refresh this gallery, and what do you think about the frame? I think everyone was afraid I was going to freak out, oh, you can't change the frame. But I was like, oh yeah, let's change the, because we had all this new experience, new information, new data that had come up, and we just thought, well, we won't be able to get it perfect, but maybe we can get it closer so that viewers will realize what Seurat was interested in.
We think we know it so well, but it's a painting that just continues to give and give and give.
He actually began the painting in 1884. But initially the painting was a much more impressionist painting. He painted it for an exhibition that was actually canceled, so he put the painting aside in his studio until October 1885, when he returned to it for a second painting campaign. Before October, over the course of that summer, he got very interested in color theory. So when he goes back to the Grande Jatte, he experiments with this, and he essentially repaints about 85% of the surface using really brightly colored dots and dashes. So what we see today is that on top of the earlier Impressionist painting.
Our painting shows up in another painting by Seurat, Models, at the Barnes collection in Philadelphia. And it's in probably its original frame when it was first exhibited. But if you also notice closely, the little painted inner frame isn't in that painting. And that's because while he was working on the models, he really started to generate his ideas about framing to a whole different level. He's already making these transitions between one area to another, one color to another, one quality of light to another. And it just seems so natural that he just moves it to the edge. After he finished Models, he seemed to have stopped work on new work, and he went back and he wanted to readdress the framing issues, these painted frame borders. The Grande Jatte was one of these.
In 1888, he actually re-stretched the canvas, added wood strips, and started experimenting at that time with using painted borders, again with this idea of contrasting colors side by side to draw your eye into the composition.
First, he just adds these little borders, and then later he starts to add another painted frame on the outside. And then that's not enough, so that sometimes he'll contain that with a white border just to make sure that you're not in competition with the wall behind it. After his death, it was sold, and the next time it shows up is behind the first collector. she had taken the painting off the stretcher and had mounted it on the wall. And so we have a good idea that he never got around to readdressing the frame. We just have this first thought about the frame, but after he had this evolution in his own frames, because he died so young, from what we've been able to find so far, he never readdressed how he would like to handle the edge.
We don't think it ever had a frame once he added the painted frame. So rolled, put on a ship, brought to Chicago.
The first few frames were gold frames, and then looking at historical documents and photos, we realized he would have preferred a white frame.
The frame that you see now is based on a photograph of this model's painting, actually, in an exhibition after his death in 1892. And the models in this photograph looks to be in its original frame. So it's about the same weight and width as the frame that we made for the Grande Jatte. As a framer, it was a lot of fun to make. The weight of the glass is close to 400 pounds alone. And you look at the size of that frame and how thin it is, it's really pretty delicate. There's actually pretty complex joinery. It's like two laps that go together and dovetail so that it's going to be able to hold all that stress. And basically, almost the entire frame was made by hand. Looking at this new frame, we give a nod to this legacy of his innovations, not only as a painter, but also as a framer, and how influential his thoughts of the edge of the painting and the transition to the outside really became.
It's special to be a part of the history of this painting. I feel like I have a small part that's connected to this piece forever, and that's pretty cool. I feel like Seurat would recognize the care and time and consideration that we put into making something good for this painting.
We really want to try to present the Grande Jatte to its full glory. And, I think unless we can get Seurat to come back through time, I don't know if we'll get there ever, but we're trying to at least, recreate a dialogue maybe that, Seurat would have been interested in.